Everybody, welcome back to a new episode of Watch Out for AGI. We have a different approach today. We have our first guest on the pod. I met Matt about 2 months ago in New York City. I was editing a podcast and vibe coding, and I turned my head and someone else was vibe coding. We had a super long chat, but one that you don't look at your watch. I really love talking to Matt. And after some point, I was like, wait, this is the kind of person that I want to have on our podcast. He's the perfect profile, solopreneur in many aspects. He's got his own company. He's curious. He's using AI daily. And I sent him a message. I said, let's get on the pod together and let's have a chat. So Matt, would you like to present yourself real quick?
I mean, you did a great job right there, but it was a very 2025 way of meeting. We were both vibe coding there, and then we started talking, and then turned into a lunch, and then some more vibe coding, and then Emmerich joined us, I believe. So it was an awesome day. Yeah. I think you did the intro well, but I'm Matt Hickman. I run a company called Flickman Media. We do a lot of video production out here in New York City. And then kind of on the side and now kind of increasing more and more, I'm messing around with AI as everyone is, but starting to build a couple of little like internal tools for us that are utilizing both Cursor to build them, and then also the apps themselves are using OpenAI backends to do some generative stuff as well. And then just for context, I studied computer science in school, graduated in 2016, and then kind of pivoted my career towards more like the creative side, the video production stuff, kind of thinking that I was done coding forever, honestly. I was like, well, that was fun. And then over Christmas break this year, my buddy who runs an AI company was like, hey, you should check out some of this AI coding stuff. It's pretty fascinating. And he specifically pointed me towards Cursor, which I had not heard of. And then when I hopped on it, Christmas Eve, just messing around, I was like, I wonder if I could just make a little like page that like shows the local weather. It felt like how I felt when I started coding in, college, where you have that magic of like making things happen, but it was like 30 times faster, where I made that web app in like 6 minutes instead of like 2 days. And so by the end of that, I was like, wow, I'm so back. And then I was like, all right, what else could I make? And then I started dinking around with, I made the first thing I tried to make with Cursor was, this is a very silly idea, but if you go to a conference, right, and if you're being strategic about it, there's probably some people that you want to meet at that conference and like some kind of partnerships or whatever you want to like create or some relationships you want to build. And so I created a little tool that you could upload like the PDF of a conference attendee list or something like that. And then it would take you and your industry and like your goals, and then it would like match it against all the people on the list. And then it would like create a plan for you on one, who you should meet that most benefits your goals of the people coming. And then two, when you should like prioritize time to meet them. So it would literally give you like a game plan from like, all right, you got 3 days at this conference. Day one, you're going to meet these people. You're going to say this. Here's like how you guys could collaborate. Here's how you could provide value to their company. Day two, day three, and then like printed it out in a little plan. It does not work very well at all. And honestly, I just stopped working on it. But the idea was there, and that got me hooked on like, okay, you can whip up this stuff like super quickly. And so yeah, so that's kind of the rundown.
Yeah, it's exactly that. You get the adrenaline rush. I have this adrenaline when I see a page that just works. It's that feeling of the one-shot prompt.
Yeah,
It's
hole in one.
yeah. And one thing, everybody, I started in my head. I was late. I took a few years off. I would say 2 years. I was not coding, and I was watching on the sidelines. I was seeing people do a lot of AI work. And I was like, I'm late, I'm late for this train. And the thing is that even if you start now, the train is you can still run faster than the train. If you go to that first wagon, you're going to be using, if you start with Cursor today, you put on agent mode, you could vibe code anything you want, you know? And I don't know if you feel that way, Matt, but do you feel like you started late, or are you at the beginning? How do you feel?
I think that for me, I've realized that my world is in a little bit of a bubble. Like the people I'm surrounded by are very, it's like I live in New York. A lot of people are very like kind of smart, technical on these trends. And so they're very ahead. And so I feel like I'm late to that crew. But then when I zoom all the way out, I realize that that crew is years ahead of everyone else. And so for that reason, I think we're early. I think we're very early, honestly. Like this, I know everything's kind of like blowing up on like Twitter and stuff like that. But even that, like the subset of people that are on tech Twitter and all that sort of stuff is a very small group and a very small percentage of people when you take into account like, the entire population of the world. Like, so I think very far ahead, but things are moving fast. So like definitely the right time to get in.
Yeah, for those that are getting started in AI, there's uh, there's the X Twitter guys, the Reddit guys are at the immediate, whenever a cursor release happens, you get a Reddit, notification. Then you see everything on X. Then it goes down. It goes down into like your Instas, your whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to follow the latest news, that those are the sources to go to. And what you realize is that people are building as they go, and you could be yourself at the very edge of everything with this cursor stuff. The way to prompt, the way to build your products. Nobody really
Mm-hmm.
knows how and where things are going. So it's very dynamic space.
I just want to add up to a point that also I think the technology is evolving so much that it's better to build now than building last year. Like basically the model became so much better. The tools are becoming so much better. I tried to experiment last year inside the company, inside Google. I was doing a hackathon and I'm retrying the same tools nowadays with different models. And this is so much better. So in my opinion, it's also like the best moment to build.
100%.
So can you go straight to the chase? What were you able to build with Cursor, and how does it impact your business today? Just give us a quick overview of your current product.
So after that conference game plan thing, I was like, all right, what if I just made something that was actually useful for like my day-to-day life? And so I went through, and whenever I would spend a long time on something that was like kind of like content based, meaning like involved writing or like summarizing or synthesis or anything like that, I would just make a note of that. And so I then had like a short list of stuff I wanted to work on. And so the first thing that was like actually useful for me, and this would probably be useful for a lot of creative services people, or honestly anything in client services, is a little feature where I can record my calls with clients. So like this, if I had a Zoom call with a client and I was going over what they wanted in a project, and then I could take that call and distill it into a proposal, or at least a first draft of a proposal that I could then go back and edit, because proposals take a long time. And so that was the first like actual feature I built out, and I paired it with a tool called Fireflies. So Fireflies actually records the call. I download the transcript from Fireflies, put the transcript into a well-written prompt that specifically asks for the return content in a specific style. Then in that kind of content display, I have a button that says duplicate to Notion, which then shoots it over to Notion, which is where I typically write my proposals. And then instead of that taking an hour, it takes me 5 minutes to clean up what it sent, because it's honestly very, very good. The thing I've learned with these models is that the more context you give them, the better. And so, and that's where it kind of like it differs from something like a Google, right? If you Google, hey Google, like I'm walking through New York City and I really want to find the best, like if you start saying all this different shit, it's going to throw it off, because it's not how those algorithms are built to work. As you know, Emmerich, you're working on them. Versus with like these LLM models, more context the better. So if you give them an hour-long phone call, it feels almost illegal, because it's like, wow, it could really understand all that. That's like so much info, but it gobbles it all up and spits out, like for instance, if we had an hour-long phone call right now and you guys were talking, if you mentioned one time that, hey, our budget is actually, slightly under 10,000, then in the budget section of the proposal, it will make sure that there's nothing over 10,000. Or if you have trained it to push the budgets, it'll pick up on that one little nuance. So that for me was like a real time saver, because it is something that typically I'll have to go back, rewatch the call, see what did they say they wanted to hear again. And that's not necessarily creative work. That's something that a model could do for you. So that was like the first kind of like useful tool. Then I went on to build a couple other tools. One is like I read this book called Never Split the Difference, which is a great negotiating book. And so I started like practicing. I built like a negotiation practice tool, where you could insert demo like emails essentially, and then you could practice negotiating against it, and it would rank how well you did and how well you followed the concepts of the book. So I think there, if you're negotiating email, you could actually use it for that. But if you're negotiating in person, you more so just need the reps of like knowing what to say. So that was another thing we worked on, because pricing creative services is challenging, and so that's something you want to get sharpen your sword at, but not something you get to practice like 10 times a day, but now you can with this little tool. And then I don't know if you just want me to list all the features, but there's many more features that you kind of get the point. Like as I would bump into a problem, I would try to build something. Now I don't want to lie and say that all these features are perfect. A lot of them are buggy and don't work super well. But what I started to do is kind of like have this little like tool belt where I have a tool for an AI powered tool for all the stuff that takes me time or that I want to get better at.
There's one thing that you said with the fire. So you still use Firefly, or you're not using Firefly anymore?
I do, yeah, I still use it.
One thing that I did build early on with the GPT days before I moved to Firefly as well, and I'm also using other stuff now, but I would take the transcript of my phone calls, and there was this like magic trick. It's give me all the numbers, every single number mentioned in this call, give it to me. And
Wow.
that was unbelievable. And you would get things that it puts things back into perspective, especially if you're talking to a potential customer, a potential partner, an investor. That was a very surprising thing to me. And yeah, that's like a super tool. Like you said, it's like magic.
Literally magic, yeah. Yeah, I love that sort of stuff.
Go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, I just had a question. So basically, if I understand correctly, your tool is about upselling, like you want to do sales, you want to sell a project, if I understand correctly?
One of the features was,
I
essentially
see.
negotiation practice for people who run creative services business, so a video production company, where you can like do a mock negotiation with the GPT, so you can get better, and it'll grade you and give you feedback.
Because for now, you're building it for yourself, and like I admire that you're doing it because like you're trying to automate like your own processes. But haven't you found like tools right now on the market that allow to do the same?
There definitely is. There's so much stuff out there. One, some of it you got to go find, and two, I want to build stuff right now. So for me, it's even if there's something out there,
I
it's
see.
never going to be like fully exactly how you want it. So it's a good challenge for me to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to build it myself, and I'm going to make it exactly how I want it. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff out there, and I'm sure there's stuff that does AI negotiation practice. I'm sure there's stuff that does all these different things, and I'm sure we'll get into this later. But I feel like now that it's so easy to build stuff, distribution is going to be everything. Like, can you get people to like hear about what you're building, and can you get them to use it? And that's going to be the moat for a lot of this stuff, because it's quite easy to build stuff, as we've talked about.
User base is going to be the biggest moat. We saw this. We were talking about this last time with Hemrick. Matt, we went to South by Southwest in March, and that became a tech conference, and a lot of AI was there. And we met a guy called Arun from Windsurf, founder of Windsurf, and OpenAI just proposed to buy for $3 billion Windsurf when they could probably code it themselves. That $3 billion is not the product. I think it's just they want to buy the customers. That's what they see is the value in tomorrow's landscape of SaaS. You can build whatever you want. Software is basically free today. How many users can you get on board? Marketing is going to be so much more important, I believe. And that's why, you work in a space where I think that it's just going to become even more competitive. And I guess a lot of people are going to come to you for more videos, more how to get your message across better than the competition.
Totally, yeah. I think you're right. It is going to become, how do you differentiate yourself from a communication standpoint? How do you get people excited about what you're doing? And because I feel like a lot of what I'm seeing right now is product demonstrations, which will always work. Product demonstrations will always work until everyone's product is doing similar stuff, and then you need something else. And like you said, that's when people usually come to us and say, "Hey, we want to do a launch video that's a little bit different. We want to hire actors. We want to do something a little bit more thought through, and it's going to help us stand apart from the 1,000 other SaaS tools that launched this week."
I saw a lot of the videos that you have on your landing page. Uh, I didn't see. I might be wrong. I didn't see any SaaS. Have you been approached by AI SaaS? Have you been approached by SaaS companies, or you're more in the real world, physical world?
Yeah, a lot of more like e-com physical product stuff. We haven't done a ton in like AI SaaS world. It's definitely an industry I'm interested in pushing more into. I guess I just don't have a ton of prior to like this kind of like diving into this AI stuff from like a video production lens. I don't have as much like experience in. But yeah, definitely something I'm interested in. And I do think what we do for the physical products companies will translate well as these markets get swamped with competitors.
I think that it's like a alignment of the stars here. You have a lot of budget. You have a lot of people that will have budget for this stuff, and like I said, SaaS will lose in value without the video, without the accompanying of good marketing. So
Mhm.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see more SaaS businesses investing in, video marketing and social media and, trying to be present. And so going back to Turbo, I would like to know how many different models, how many different products did you use? Uh, and what was your sentiment? So you mentioned Firefly, you mentioned Perplexity.
Mhm.
How many of these did you put onto your?
I guess it would just be three. So, OpenAI use it. I forget which model. I think it was using 4.0 at the time. We might change it now. Perplexity, and then Fireflies. Fireflies, though, we didn't fully like integrate it. Right now, it's like a manual thing where I will record on Fireflies, and then you can just export JSON, and then in the kind of like flow for the discovery call template, you can upload a JSON. So I'm sure I could integrate that and make that smoother. But so right now, I guess it would just be those three tools kind of cobbled together.
And what was your sentiment? Was that easy to set up? Did it require much thinking? Do you have any issue with quality? Is there anything that you're seeing lacking from OpenAI or Perplexity, things that you would like to see yourself?
Yeah, I think so. The way I thought about it was I didn't overthink it. I just started, and so I was familiar with ChatGPT and OpenAI. I was already using that person. I was like, oh, we'll just start here, and I know it works. The limitations, they're nuanced because they all can seemingly do everything, but they do, as you start to use them more, have their kind of things they're best at. ChatGPT for writing or like OpenAI for writing, it does seem to give a little bit, I don't, it's got a personality on it. It's a little bit corny. Like the writing a lot of times is really corny. And so in the outreach tool that we have where we like pre-write some emails for you, I've gone back and forth extensively to try to make those prompts not sound so freaking corny, but I've not been able to get it. It's close. It's better, but it's not exactly where I want it to be. And then for Perplexity, obviously that's kind of known as like the model that's really good at search and doing like a lot of like deep research. So that one is really only used for again for that outreach feature to research somebody and deliver 3 to 6 insights on them and the company they work for to help you write a better email to them, a better cold outreach email. And then I guess Fireflies, I was just already using that. So I know there's like Otter and Phantom. There's other products that do the exact same thing, if not more. But again, just starting where I was at. If I know how to use it, I'm just going to use it.
Man, there's one funny thing I was going to say is that, it started with Firefly. The way these products work, I believe, is someone has it in their call and you're like, oh, what is that? And then you become part of the club, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But then you go around and you're like, what? Like Otter AI, background AI? Like I've seen at least 10 of them and I know they do all the same thing. They send the email out. It's like the use case was nailed. And I don't even know if you guys want to start doing one, you could probably set one
You can
up
probably vibe code it for yourself, to be honest.
and save on costs. Firefly is expensive, man.
It is. And I think we're kind of all realizing the same thing. Like, you're right. The use case, I think, was the big thing. And they realized that this is actually a really helpful use case because a lot of people are taking notes and then like doing things with those notes after. So having someone do that for you is like actually a time saver versus like a lot of other things. And I've even found this when I'm working on stuff. It's like you think it's like useful and then you build it and then you don't even use it yourself. You're like, okay, this is not that useful. And so I think that, like you said, the use case, everyone kind of bought into like, yeah, this is actually helpful. And then once that was the case, they're like, well, the actual product's not that hard to build. Like we could, like I said, spin this up in a weekend. And so now you have, 20 competitors. So again, that begs the question, like, what is going to make people stay loyal? And I know Fireflies has done a pretty good job. I like their interface, like, on their actual like web app. And I think that's going to be one of the things is like, is that interface, is the communication, is all that other stuff is going to be the reason someone chooses Fireflies versus an Otter versus whatever the other one is.
Yeah, it really begs the question, what is the moat? At the end, Google is just looking at this like a lion saying, yeah, get let them get all tired, right? I'm gonna come out when everybody's tired. I'm just gonna eat everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're talking about this, and that's exactly the thing. It's now in Google Meet. You have notes that are automatically taken in Google Meet. So, and it was shit at the beginning. I was like always bitching on it, but it really improved recently. And I was going actually to ask how Fireflies compare. Like, is Fireflies really good at taking notes?
I don't know, honestly. I feel like it's like, I would say the summaries are good. The summaries are good, and I like the statistics it gives you. It'll be like, all right, Matt talked 60% of the time, Emmerich talked 20.
I see.
And
This
so
is nice.
that's nice, but again, that's not technically hard to create something that does that. It's more just like the insight to even put that, like that people would find that useful was cool, and they did that before others. But yeah, I think Google Meet could make this product overnight and probably make it even more integrated, because right now you have to like your Fireflies thing automatically joins every meeting you're in. So it's like a little, they're kind of hacking into it versus having it built into Google Meets. It seems like a no-brainer. So I would definitely I would definitely worry about that if I was, Fireflies. I'm
Yeah,
curious why you guys, like you said, Remy, I don't know if they're just waiting to eat all these guys up or why they haven't done it already.
I mean, Emmerich, so to answer your question that you asked, is it any good? For me, it's a GPT wrapper and a GPT turbo wrapper. It's like a O wrapper. It's like it doesn't feel like it's evolving. It's more of a UX thing. I think that they're also focusing mostly on enterprise. They want to get the thing signed for a license where you would use that in enterprise. I think that they're just focusing on that. Now, in terms of UX, there's a really fun aspect to this one. I'm a bilingual Emmerich as well. I do meetings in both French and English, and I've done a few Spanish ones for my business. And sometimes you would have a person speaking Spanish, and you're like, you got a bad accent, but you get by, right? And they're like, oh, no, I can speak English. So you bounce back and forth between languages, and then Fireflies is just it's useless. For
Really
that scenario, it's really, really bad.
interesting. Multilingual doesn't work for. What does it do? It just defaults to the first language.
The language that's selected, and
Mm.
you can actually mess everything up if you selected the wrong language and you started a meeting in the other language. It just doesn't work. I don't know if they fixed that one. Funny thing, Emmerich, what we're using here, which is Riverside, they detect that you're speaking another language and they translate. So you have the transcript in English. Let's say we start speaking Spanish, the audio will be Spanish, but it will stay in English on the transcript. So, they're really thinking about on an AI perspective, how can we use the transcript? You can, if you want to throw it into another, probably AI would understand the difference between both. This is a good segue, I think, to at what point is a SaaS worth coding, right? You have all these ideas, they are probably doable in a day, 2 days, and then they obviously take longer because cursor starts to hallucinate and it becomes annoying. But at what point would you consider vibe coding something, spending a whole weekend and getting a product out? What would be for you a criteria to do that?
That's a good question. I really like that. At what point is it worth doing? I think the worry with all this stuff is like you said, if you make it, is it going to be obsolete in 2 seconds? And so for me, I feel like I've focused. I think if anything, if it's just generative, if it's like a wrapper of, hey, we're going to help you write better or something like that, like we said earlier, it'll just keep it as a prompt, honestly, because the models are going to change so quickly, or they'll add the UI in like a week or something. Or if it's like, oh, like ours lets you add files, and then like next week, all of a sudden, all of them allow you to add files. So that's not worth building. I think the more niche, the better. If you have very specific use cases for yourself, that to me warrants it. For me, if it's tying together things that are unlikely to be tied together by like an OpenAI or a Claude, for instance, like this other kind of product idea that I've been toying around with is uh, kind of like a life coach esque thing that texts you every morning. And I don't know if that'll be something that OpenAI and Claude do. I don't know if they'll add the ability to like send yourself texts, which to me is just, it might seem stupid because it's like, okay, maybe they can send you a notification, but for whatever reason, like if I could get a text every morning that just says like, hey, based on your goals, here's what you should be doing today, and based on like your running, your training for your marathon, here's what you need to run today. That's awesome. Just as like as a text, as if it's like my, and I'm sure there's products out there that do that, but so for me, if it's like tying together stuff like that, where it's like multiple platforms, that could be useful. Also, I think the biggest one for me, because I'm not currently trying to make any of these things huge, is does it seem fun? Is it personally useful to me? And would that make my life better if I had this little thing that works? Like I see a future where anyone who is like a little bit tech friendly has like an entire personal suite of tools that they've built over the course of their lives. And by the time, I'm 50, I'm basically a cyborg. I have like, I'm like half robot, half person. I have like my creativity, my human, but I have all these cool, like little personal SaaS tools that I built for myself. One that schedules the kids, soccer practices and all that. One that like is like a grocery automated fucking algorithm that like will order DoorDash based on like what's in the like all that sort of stuff. I see a future where we can all build our own little personal use case SaaS tools to kind of help us with our lives. That was kind of a rambling answer, but that's how I'm thinking about it.
I do think that there could be a future where like the only barrier would be like hardware, energy, and then like, you know, the agents will get so good. You could ask the agent to just do the SaaS.
Totally.
It's like, oh no, you know what? Like, I don't like the way that the blinds were, open last time. Like recode that. I don't like the way that you cooked my meal. Like you need to reprogram a bit. Like the temperature needs to change. Like I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, 100%.
And you would run that like off the internet. Like it would be on hardware in your house. Maybe that could
Mm-hmm.
be
Mm-hmm.
the future. Who knows?
And I think, and this is kind of a whole another rabbit hole we could go down, but like, so if that's the case, then what's left for us? And for me, it's, do you know what you want? And can you curate things? So if there's infinite ability to create, can you, like you said, can you create something and then be like, not quite what I wanted. I wanted a little bit, I wanted the shades 2% lower. Like you have to be able to have a vision. And this kind of ties together a bigger conversation of like, what is the role of the human? I know this is weird that this is like now a real thing, but it used to be considered sci-fi, but now we're starting to think about it. Like, okay, if all this stuff is, if I can have an AI agent that is create AI web apps all on its own without like, what's my job? Well, in my opinion, these things are still like servants without a master. So they need someone to tell them what to do or what their purpose is, what they want to make. So for you as a person, your job is to have vision, is to curate something interesting, is to put these tools to good use to make something hopefully beautiful and useful in the world. But that's just my point of view.
I think that today, if you are running an AI company and you don't have an answer to that question, you might drown. These are the questions that they ask the Elons, the Sam Altmans, and they have an answer to that question. If you don't know what you want, and if you see this, like it's going to take jobs away, you're not built for being a CEO of an AI company. You should see it more like, oh, I don't have to build a website anymore. That job sucked before. It really did. I was a web developer. I
Mm-hmm.
spent hours doing I-18N, a translation for a client. And my job was taken away, but you know what? I hated doing translation for their damn website. Now I just do a one prompt and it's done. And what more can I do? How much more can I generate more value? How much more can we do? That's and then what do you want now? Now that you can do everything that you couldn't do before, what do you want to do now? It's a real question. Yeah.
It's going to turn everything quite philosophical, I think. I think as work starts to get eradicated, we can no longer, not that all work's going to be eradicated, but as things start to change, like we won't be able to hide behind the veil of just like going to work and like, stuff like that. So we're going to be forced to face some of the bigger questions of like, oh, what do I want to do? What is my purpose here? If I'm not my job, what do I want to create? What do I want to do with my life? Whereas I think now it's very easy to kind of just forget those questions and like get lost in the day to day. But I think, I don't know how soon, but there is a time frame where we will get to a point where we're forced to face these bigger questions.
Going down the philosophical route here, uh, just had a thought that went through my mind. I don't know how it is in the US. Like communism doesn't exist in the US, but people talk about it here in Europe, and that was a Russian thing. Communism cannot exist anymore. Like that's not possible. If people don't work, you cannot go behind the work, like you said. You cannot like unionize behind work if there's no work. If everybody is
There's no
like
work to
their
be.
own person, individual, and you just have machines around you, that whole ideology might just disappear. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I think there's also this notion that I think a lot of people think right now, they're like, oh, if I didn't have my job, like I'd be so sick and I could just like, do whatever. It'd be so dope. But as someone who like, I work for myself. And so my workload is naturally a little bit more like a roller coaster. And so there are times that are slower than others. If I have one slow week, I go crazy. I'm like, what the hell do I do with myself? And so I think people who are kind of like stuck in a job that like, requires a lot of their time think that if they didn't have that job, that everything would be awesome. But what you realize is when you don't have the stuff to do right in front of you, you're forced to sit with yourself and your own thoughts. And you can only play video games for so long until you get bored. And then we're back to where we started. We're facing these bigger questions and you're like, holy shit, what the hell do I do with my life? So I think we're going to have not a crisis, but an epidemic of like existentialism where people are just like, whoa, okay, what do I do with myself?
I was on my bike the other day going around and thinking about this exact same thing, and some revelation hit me. It was very crazy. I was like, what's the future going to be like when, I was thinking about supermarkets where, you have people in the aisles, putting stuff, right? But, and like, I was like, what happens when like, you don't need those guys anymore because like you have robots doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what happens when that technology comes? And it's like, wait, what the heck? That technology is already here. And
Yeah, right.
literally, I believe that there might be places that have those robots and those humans. And the human can think to themselves, like, why am I still here? Yet they are. Like, the thing is that there's a lot of, like, I think that we are employing people for the sake of employing people. We're literally giving them things to do at the
Totally.
at the price that they're willing to stay idle.
Sure.
And then you have the visionaries that are going ahead and going forward. But I think there won't a one-shot crisis like, oh my God, everybody's going to lose their job. I think that we're already there where we are employing people that don't need to be employed right now. Like there's if you stopped working, a lot of people, the company would
Nothing.
go fine. That's my opinion. I think that it's going to take years though.
I agree. And I have a buddy who works at a company and he said they have 11 people who work in payroll and their job is to run payroll for the company. 11 people. I was like, isn't that like what QuickBooks does? Like, couldn't one person click one button and run payroll for the entire company once? He's like, oh, but some people want it taxed and mailed. Like, obviously, these are kind of older companies with older people working at them that are just kind of like stuck in their ways. But like, that's 11. And no offense to people in payroll, I'm sure they're awesome and great at their job. But like, from just like a logistical standpoint, you do not need that many people to like run payroll. And so you're right there. I think there are people that are just employed for the sake of being employed or employed because quote unquote, that's how we've always done it. And there's a lot of emotional cost to switching that to a new software because you'd literally be slashing jobs. So I think, and I also agree that it's not going to be a one shot thing. I think the step changes will happen when certain products are released. So for instance, like when the first humanoid that's like under $5,000 gets released, that'll be like a step change. But again, that still won't be like a one-shot kill. It'll be like a, 5% jump in usage across the country or something like that. But yeah, I think it'll be gradual. But like we were talking about earlier, I think people are going to need to reskill, that's what's happened in the past. And I know this is a little bit different. People compare it to the Industrial Revolution. There was no factories, and there's factories, and people learned to work in factories. I think that does have relevance. I also think we're all kind of just guessing as to what's to come, but I don't think anyone really has any idea.
Maybe there'll be a prompting factory. You go to the prompting factory.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Prompt consultant, prompt factory.
And the prompt
all that
engineers,
stuff.
they were being paid like crazy. That was a whole craze. Emmerich, explain to us a bit, because you knew a bit about this one, like prompt engineering. What is the salary range, and like, do they still exist?
They became really trendy. It's a little bit like the data scientist of the last year. They became really trendy because we thought that customing the prompts would be super important. And yes, it was when GPT-4 went out. But nowadays you can give like a really vague prompt, and like the model should be able to think by itself what you're actually asking for. So all these companies are like releasing their prompting guide for free. So I don't think it's such a relevant job anymore, to be honest. But I was listening to you guys, and my personal take is way more simple. So we all have an existential crisis because Remy is a software engineer. I am a software engineer. Matt, you were a software engineer. And we're all asking ourselves, like, what is happening to us? Are we really needed anymore? And I think we do. It's just the job is changing. We are not like just coding stupidly, but we're like becoming system architects, and like we're becoming like orchestrators of agent. And I think in the future, and I'm seeing it a lot on a lot of interviews of CEOs, it sounds always a bit bullshit, but I think in the next 1, 2, or 3 years, by 2027, 2028, every software engineer will just be a manager of agents. And that's okay. That's just the future. That's how it will be. And I think we might still be employed at the end. It's just our job is evolving.
Do you think a company, though, that used to need 12 software engineers to get off the ground will now just hire one and have them orchestrate agents?
It all depends on the output. Theoretically, absolutely. Theoretically, yes. Specifically, if like right now we see that Claude, OpenAI, Gemini are all really good and they are actually crafting apps super fast. Though every time you go into like enterprise, like deep enterprise, you actually need to create workflows and including other things from the company, etc. So you just basically need people that knows what is needed for the company. So you need a way to guide the AI. I don't know if one will replace like 12. Maybe you will still have the same number of engineers, but they will just be more like just give more output. And software, as you both said, I think I really agree with both of you, will be less important and less useful. It's just really about what our app is supposed to do and what are the customers we're supposed to serve. We care way less about the software in it.
Matt, I had a follow-up question on that one, because he was saying, we're getting replaced. Funny thing is that, I was in a taxi once going to the airport, and the guy said, like a French complainer complaining all the time, the robo taxis, they're going to replace us. And I was like, you know what, dude? In the food chain of replacement, I think that the software engineer gets replaced before the taxi. But in terms of replacement, so question, you hold the camera, you get behind the camera, right? That's what you do for your job, for your business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For a lot of the shoots, I'm behind the camera. Sometimes I hire people behind the camera, but yeah.
And how do you see this changing that aspect of your job? I saw actually a video of a humanoid like doing this with a camera and like doing crazy stunts, and the camera would stay perfectly idle.
Yeah.
Did you see that? What do you think about the future of filmmaking?
Yeah, there's definitely, it's like any industry, it's coming for filmmaking as well. There's a couple of different fronts, right? That you have like generative video. So people just generating video from nothing or from a prompt or from an image or something. So that's kind of like one frontier. Then you have like you're saying more of like the hardware side of like humanoids or like robot arms that are like, and there's already a ton of products that are like robot arms that can do very precise movements and move cameras really fast. And that's what a lot of you see it like when you see a Budweiser commercial, and like there's some crazy like orbit where like the camera goes around, or the POV like goes around the Budweiser thing as it's pouring the beer. Like that's already using a robot arm. And so there's tons of stuff like that. I think the generative stuff is getting better and better and better. It's hard to say where it'll be right now. I don't think a lot of it's usable. It looks a little like it's just enough off where you're like, something fishy is going on here. I think it's going to replace a lot of the low level content first. I think people are going to use it a lot now in an experimental way. Just like I know Coke did that commercial that was AI. I think part of why they're doing that is just tap into like the general zeitgeist of like everyone's obsessed with AI. So it'd be cool if we did an AI commercial. I don't know if they genuinely thought that it was better than like a real commercial, but I think maybe as some of that dies down, you'll see, until the models can get to a point where it's like indistinguishable, like actually indistinguishable, which it's definitely getting close in some regards. I think you'll still see a lot of human made stuff. I think when it comes to like, because I work across several different sectors, a lot of stuff that gets filmed is things that are happening in real life. So if you're covering an event that's going on, I think that's going to stay, because you're not going to really, at least as it stands now, it wouldn't really make sense to generate that content if the event's happening, you're filming it there. I think where I could see it being a little bit interesting is if you're filming an interview or like a testimonial video of somebody talking, and then you can upload all that footage and then write a script and have basically change what they said. I think that is a great use case that we'll see soon, because that is something that we struggle with a lot, where it's like trying to get people to say what you want them to say in a way that sounds natural can sometimes be tricky. And so if you have an hour-long footage of them talking, where a model can ingest that, really understand their facial structure, how they move, how their voice sounds, and then can basically from that reference generate anything, that'll be really interesting. Again, that'll be like a hybrid. It'll be a mixture of like capturing the real footage, using that as reference, so then you can actually get like a real looking final video, but using the models to change what they're actually saying. So I think it's definitely coming for filmmaking. It's definitely coming for video production. I'm not hiding from it. I'm trying to learn as much as possible. I'm trying to be in the know, be the one using it, not running from it. But yeah, it's coming.
I think that, you have to be the pioneer. You have to be the one using that tech, and then you're not scared. You're actually creating the norm. You're actually pushing things forward. We might be able to film better things, more things. You might not need to have so much equipment with you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the future is just, running around with like a smaller camera, and then you're like, oh no, but my agent's gonna like do something.
Yeah. So it's just a reference camera. I'm just getting references for the agent.
I had an idea of a product, going back, like, is it worth doing it? But like,
Yeah.
where like for real estate, people take photos of different points of view of a place, right? With each point of view, you don't need to film the whole space. What you could do is just take 5 photos, and then you could generate a video of the entire space just
Totally.
with like a few photos, just taking references. I think
Totally.
that could be a very big use case if you
Oh
want to.
yeah, big time.
Yeah.
They have something called Matterport, which has been around for a long time, that essentially does that, but it's you needed like they had these special cameras that you would put inside of a home. I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is how they generate like a 3D view of homes. If you look on like Zillow or something, it's called like a Matterport system. They put it inside of a house, you move it to the next room, move to the next room, move to the next room, and it captures like a bunch of photos. But what you're saying is a similar idea, but you would need way less references because the AI models are better, and they can kind of like they can extrapolate off of less data points and still get a usable kind of like output.
I've
So
done
yeah, I
it.
think that's a
I've
good
done
idea.
it before. I don't have the product for it. I just use the generative AI, but it's on Rent Remote, my website. I have a few listings
Nice.
that it looks like a video, and people are like, "Wow, you
Yeah.
take videos?" I'm like, "No, I
No,
take
yeah, I
photos." And
did.
then yeah, one thing though, like, so when a client comes to you with a they need an advertisement video. There's another side to AI here that's not in the video production side. It's more about the ideation,
Mm-hmm.
creating the storyline, creating you know the the storyboard. I don't know, do you call it a
Sure. Yeah.
storyboard? Yeah. Do you
You're
use
talking about like
AI?
creative development.
Yeah, do you use AI for that process, or is it still old school?
I think if sometimes I do. Short answer, sometimes. And what I do, I mean, you can do this all day long. You can say, AI, generate me 10 ideas about a storyline of how this person overcomes some transformation, blah, blah, blah. And it'll give you a bunch of stuff. I find that those ideas are typically, I feel like with all these models, you're essentially getting an average of the internet. So like it's going and reading the entire internet and then synthesizing it and they'll spit out a bunch of different ideas, but they all are an average. So they're going to have the same storyline. They're going to have the same twists and turns, whatever. I do find it helpful to like conquer blank page syndrome. So if you're like, all right, we're working with this product, they sell a widget that's like it's Apple headphone ear covers. How do we tell a story about these that's gonna get people excited? You'd be like, chat, here's what we're trying to do. We're generating the story about da da da. Give me 5 ideas. Mostly they're gonna suck. The ideas they're gonna be like very bland or like corny or cheesy. But they might say something in those 5 ideas that you can catch on to with your human brain and be like, oh wait, that's actually interesting. Let me take that and run with it. Like, he's like, oh, let's follow the story of someone who's blind or deaf and then puts on these earphones, and because they're so squishy and padded that they actually can hear again. And you're like, all right, that's really corny, but I like the deaf thing. I'm like, maybe we can do something with that. So like it'll spit out enough stuff to just like get your brain moving. It's like a good sounding board, a good like intellectual sparring partner, maybe not necessarily a good ghostwriter.
I've seen that generally. It's been a hit or miss. Either it gets the job done and I'm super happy, or
Yeah.
I get super frustrated.
Yeah.
I just tried to film the intro because, we're starting up and now I want to get an intro.
Oh, yeah, I
And
need an intro.
man, like I took a few of them and I started reading them with enthusiasm, and I was like, this sucks. Man, like this literally, like I need to do it myself. It doesn't sound natural. The words are just corny. Man, it's not there yet.
It's funny. It's hard to put your finger on it sometimes. You're like, I don't know what it is. And you can sense it. Like you can, when you read something, you're like, this feels GPT-ish. And on the surface, it's like, well, it actually wrote some good sentences. But like something about it, nothing will ever be, at least for now, maybe later, but nothing right now will be the human touch, the sprinkling a little bit of your own pizzazz on it, including a personal anecdote talking about how you got to where you were. Like, this is what makes stuff special, and in the way you say something, your hand movements, all this different stuff. It's hard to replicate that with these GPTs right now.
Take a GPT prompt and try to be enthusiastic and emotional, and you'll see I think that might be the test,
Soulless.
the Turing test.
Yeah, the Turing test, the Remy test.
All right. So, Matt, this was a amazing conversation that we had here. We went all around AI and how you use it in your flows. We went over your Turbo product, which is helping you day to day. It's helping you every day with your tasks in your business. We talked a bit about your take on the future of humanity, of AI, and the future of filmmaking towards the end. It was a super inspiring conversation here. Do you have anything to say to our listeners on, something from a solopreneur point of view, how to get started in AI, something small, whatever, something that helped you?
I would say pick the smallest possible problem you can find, pour yourself a glass of wine, and try to vibe code a solution to it in one night. Once you have your first magic moment, you'll be hooked. I think that's the ticket. Don't go so big that you scare yourself. Go literally as small as possible. Try to fight the smallest little dragon you can. Once you slay him, you're going to be hooked.
That sounds very much like me.
But we're also at our company, Flickn Media. We have a giveaway going right now that maybe would be good to push here if there's any kind of like tech AI founders that listen. It's the first time we're doing this, but I want to start doing this like once a year, if not quarterly. We're giving away like a $25,000 production that's typically what we charge for it. And we have an application right now that you can sign up for until May 2nd. So until next Friday. I don't know when this episode's going out. Maybe it's too late, but thought I'd mention that. So if you're kind of a brand CMO founder, anything like that, and you want to create, like we were talking about earlier, something that cuts through the noise, you're tired of UGC ads, you're tired of running static ads, you want to make something that's a little bit more emotionally relevant, has a little more humanness into it. We are running a giveaway. We're going to give that away to one lucky brand. So I can give you a link or something like that to attach to this, but wanted to mention that here.
For anybody that might be interested in that, I've looked at Matt's videos on his website. You should first of all go check out the videos on his landing page. They are there's not one that's better than the other. They go straight to the point. You understand exactly the pain points. You understand the product. It makes you want to buy immediately. So I can only say that I would be interested in this one myself. So go check out Matt's website, first of all, and check out the link for this 25K production offering that he has for us. With that said, it has been a great episode. And thank you so much, Matt, for spending the time here and chatting with us. I loved it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. This is awesome.